Hi, I'm Josh, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'll give you my May TBR. This month is the Asian Pacific Islander month, and because of that, we have the Asian Readathon hosted by With Cindy, used to be Read with Cindy. It's basically a readathon that promotes you or encourages you to read books by Asian authors. I participate in this every year since it came out, and I believe that's like every year since I've been on BookTube. So I'm excited to participate again. I have a lot of books that I'm excited to read for this readathon. But that said, I have a couple other books that I'm reading for other obligations as well. Those will be last in the video. I'll try to give you some timestamps. But without further ado, let's talk about the books that I'm reading in May of 2023. When I talk about the books I want to read for Asian Readathon, I'm going to mention their ethnicity as well, because that is one of the prompts that you're encouraged to do in the Readathon, which is to say to read books by different Asian authors. My goal here isn't to focus on the reading challenges. Honestly, the books that I've crafted are books I just want to read. I didn't choose them to satisfy these prompts. I've given up prompts, honestly, a lot of reading-a-thons, because I feel like they're a lot easier to answer after you've read the books, rather than try and know what's in the book ahead of time. But let's talk about what the prompts are first, actually, and now see which books happen to fit these prompts. The first one is read a book by Asian author. That's easy, obviously. Read a book featuring a friendship between at least two Asian characters. Number 3, read a book written by an Asian author and or featuring an Asian character that is focused on identity and self-discovery. Number 4, read a book written by an Asian author and or featuring an Asian character that shows them going on an adventure. Number 5, read a book featuring an Asian character who is either a hot mess, famous, or eccentric. Okay, I think I can make these work. So I'm going to go through these, and I'll mention the ones that I think they might satisfy. Okay, so number 1, Hotline by Dimitri Nasrallah. This was a Canada Reads contender. I've read 2 of the Canada Reads of 2023. That was because it's Mexican Gothic, and Station 11 happened to be on that list. Hotline did not win. The reason I wanted to read this, in fact, it's only published in Canada, so I had to go contact the publisher directly and purchase an ebook from them. The reason I particularly wanted to read this was because the reason it was voted off in Canada Reads, I guess I should give you background. Canada Reads is this thing where every year they pick 5 books, or rather 5 debaters, and they pick a book to represent they feel like all Canadians should read, and they debate why this book should be picked. And this year, Hotline got voted off because basically it was a tie between another book, and the person who didn't vote for either of those 2 books had to choose between the 2 finals, and I had to say Hotline and the other book. I think it was actually Hotline, and the book ended up winning. And her logic was that it didn't make her feel good. It wasn't a happy book, and this was a white cis woman talking about the reason she didn't want that book to win was because it didn't make her feel good. And don't get me wrong, from what I hear, it's a book about a migrant experience into Canada. It's not happy. It's not a happy book. It's meant to be a slice of life, a window into this perspective. And it got voted off for this, and it was just like, it was such a fucking cringe moment, I tell you. I figured, why not let that motivate me to read this book? I'm excited to get into it. That's why I chose to read it. The next one I happen to have a copy of, Image for Monster. Image for Monster by Talia Dutton is a comic. I believe it's YA. It's queer, and I think it's like a Frankenstein's monster type thing. That's all I really know. As far as the categories, I feel like you could call this an adventure, maybe. If not, I feel like maybe there are 2 friends here. Maybe to make friends. I think this should fit one of those 2. Next up is Our Missing Hearts by Celestine, which I believe is a dystopia book, and that's all I really know. I don't even know why I spent my time presenting these prompts. I'm realizing I don't know. They fit, okay? Tell me which prompts you think will satisfy that book, and we'll go from there. Celestine's book was one that I think I put on my 5-star prediction list this last year, and so I want to read it just so I can, finish up that list, but also because I want to read her book. I've loved her first 2 books, so I think I will love this one too. It is her first stint at something that's somewhat speculative, so we'll see whether or not that changes things, but I have high expectations, hence me calling it a 5-star prediction. Next up is a reread, Girls Burn Brighter. I just realized I meant to tell you the ethnicities of these authors. The first one is Lebanese. The second one, Talia Dutton, Image for Monsters. I don't actually know her ethnicity. She's a mixed race Asian. That's all she happens to advertise, so I'm not going to stress too much about that. Next up, Celeste Ng. It's Chinese. The next author is an Indian author, Shobha Rao. This one was one that I loved when I read it back in 2019. It's a book that I read before I even got on book 2, and I think it was one that I had advertising on my bookshelf when I still had bookshelves for almost my entire time when I had those bookshelves. It was one of my favorites. It was one of the first books that I read at the recommendation of Books and Lala, and I remember I just absolutely adored it. It's made me trust her recommendations ever since, and I really want to reread it, especially since when I look at my review of it on Goodreads, I can't help but cringe because I basically refer to it as a similar take to The Handmaid's Tale, and there's just so much wrong with that take. Not only the fact that Handmaid's Tale is just peak white feminism with absolutely no intersectionality, but also the reality that is speculative in its nature, even if it is based in things that have happened in the past. This is a very real scenario in Girls Run Brighter where these women exist in this very repressive society. It's not something that is hypothetical, even if all the parts of Handmaid's Tale have happened before. This is a very real narrative. As far as what this explores, I remember it explores just obviously misogyny, patriarchy. I believe there's some queer aspects to it too. I just remember being a very compelling book. And so now, some 4 years later, I'm finally going to be revisiting it, and I'm really excited to be doing that. I also, side note, was very excited when I followed the author on Twitter, and she followed me back for whatever reason. I don't know why she did, but I felt honored. Anyways, next up, I think it's also another reread, actually. This book has been probably 15 years since I've read this book. 15 years. But The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini is an Afghan author, and this is probably one of the most popular books I've ever read. I remember loving this in high school, but I read this in high school, so I have basically no memory of it. Any value I got from it, I think, is probably gone just because I don't remember. It's too far away. Like there are a few things in high school that I remember, and even things that I do remember are usually because I read them multiple times. And it's time. I want to reread it, and I think I'm kind of in the mood for some rereads this month. So this and Girls Run Brighter seem like a good fit. Actually, this fits the adventure. I know there's an adventure here. I mean, to call it an adventure is kind of a stretch, but I mean, it's a life journey, and I think that constitutes an adventure in my mind. And then finally, the last book in my TBR for the Asian Readathon is going to be Earthlings by Sayaka Murata, a Japanese author. And I knew I wanted horror, probably Japanese horror, and I actually have 3 books here listed for the Japanese horror selection. But I'm only going to mention this one because my goal is to prioritize different ethnicities of the authors before I get to multiple Japanese authors. For me, I just wanted something that would be like a nice, horrific Japanese horror. Why? I don't know. I like horror. Simple as that. And this one seems to have a lot of good ratings and be very popular. Hence me reading it. What is it about? Hell if I know. You're asking too much. Let's just keep going. For the James Baldwin Readathon, that is continuing. We are doing a live show probably the second weekend of May. And this is for the April reads, which I'm reading in May just to have it closer to the actual discussion. We're going to be discussing Go Tell It on the Mountain, I believe his first novel, as well as the second essay from Fire Next Time, Down at the Cross, and maybe a couple other short stories, as well as one of his plays. Primarily, I consider this sort of Go Tell It on the Mountain and Fire Next Time. Those are my 2 primary reads for this readathon. I have that all constituted as one read, because if I acknowledge that it's like 2 or 3 reads, it makes this TBR of 10 books a little too ambitious. But let's ignore that fact and play pretend that I am going to read all these books. Next up are 2 or 3 NetGalley books that I'm going to be aiming to read in this month. I don't think I read any NetGalley this last month. The first one, A Wonderful Life by Stephen Jay Gould, is one I actually already started in April. This is an adaptation of a 1989 work by Stephen Jay Gould, who was a skeptic and an anthropologist, a scientist, and this is about the burger shell in Canada. What am I saying when I say that? Basically, it was like complex life first formed during the Cambrian explosion. The evidence of that is in a burger shell. All those evidence of that, and it's talking about that. My first impression, to be honest, it's a little esoteric for my taste. But I got an audio arc for this, so I'm going to be listening to it. Next, I have Lone Woman by Victor LaValle, which I've heard amazing things about. A historical horror. Victor LaValle has never disappointed, not once. I think I've read 3, maybe 4 of his works. But for some reason, I won't lie, I don't know, there's something about, maybe it's the historical context, there's something about it that just makes me want to keep pushing it off. But I really need to get to it, and I genuinely think that if I just commit to it, I'll love it. I do. It's just, that's the problem with like being like a split between an organized and mood reader. I want to organize around my mood, but I also want to craft my mood to accomplish certain goals And it's trying to tweak whatever I need to tweak to make that happen, and it's not easy. So I'm just hoping if I list it here, I'll find a moment in the month where I'm like, I feel mildly compelled to pick up that book. It's like I take up that moment and just grab the book. That's how my mind works. Don't ask me why, don't ask me how. But lastly is another audio arc that I got granted last month, Venice Underground by Jeff Vandermeer. Jeff Vandermeer, of course, is known for Annihilation. My favorite work by him is the anthology, the Time Travel's Almanac, which is an edited anthology by him and his wife, which I absolutely adore and recommend to anyone who loves time travel. This was his first book. He's known for steampunk, weird sci-fi fiction. Annihilation is peak that. And so I wanted to request this, and I got it granted. I have so many books by him that I need to read, and now I have a reason to read this one because I got the audio arc for it. So I really need to read it before it expires on my NetGalley app. And then that's it. That's all 10. 10 is ambitious. I don't think it's crazy ambitious because this April has been a really good reading month. And if I can sort of ride that wave into May, maybe it'll be the start of a new wave of just a lot more reading, back to what I used to be for a while there before whatever happened to make me read less. We'll see what happens. It is getting into winter here, so I might be biking less, but I'm hoping not. There's no snow, so I just gotta get some warm clothes. But that's my reading TBR for May. I am curious, what are you reading? Are you participating in the Asian Readathon? And if so, what books are you picking up? But as always, hope you have a great day, stay safe, and I'll see you all next time. Okay?